going to talk about the early knowledge level, or 10 things to do before age 10. We're going to give a suggested course of study. This will be an application of what we talked about yesterday in the seminar on the Introduction to the Trivium. Before age 10, the child is at the early knowledge level where he is mostly dependent upon his concrete sensory experiences for learning. Around age 10, the child enters a more intense phase of a knowledge level where his brain becomes physically able to make more complex connections, which makes the child more able to handle abstract concepts and helps the child with self-management and self-control. Force-feeding academic studies before age 10 is not an efficient use of your time. It's not going to accomplish all of the good which you desire, and it may actually work some harm. Now, of course, the exact age differs from child to child, but about age 10, the child becomes developmentally mature enough to pursue studies which are more academic. Before age 10, the focus should be on building a good foundation for the later academics. And we suggest that formal academics should be the focus after age 10. If we exercise those parts of our child's mind which are developing, we will strengthen and enlarge his capacities. So in the early years, before age 10, we want to sow such seeds as honoring God and parents, developing a capacity for language, developing the appetite for learning, enriching the memory, encouraging creativity, and instilling a good work and service ethic. These are the kinds of things which will lay a good foundation for the formal academics later. So academics must be built upon a good moral foundation. So first we're going to talk about a list of 10 things to do before age 10. Number 1 is reading and writing. Sometime before your child reaches the age of 10, you should teach him to read using a good intensive phonics method. Now, a few children will learn to read at age 4, a very few. A few will be fully 10 years old before they can confidently read a basic reader. However, most children will learn to read sometime between the ages of 5 and 8. The age that a child learns to read is no indicator of how intelligent they are or how well they'll do later on academically. Our children learn to read from anywhere from the ages of 5 to 9, and all of them read equally well. We suggest that you begin phonics instruction at age 5 or 6, and if after a reasonable amount of time you find that your child is not retaining any of the instruction, even though he's putting forth a good amount of effort, then you may want to put the curriculum aside, wait a few months, and then begin again, and continue this routine until it sticks. Don't be overly concerned if your child does not learn to read at 5 or 6. Many children don't read until they're 7 or 8. Now, homeschooling families have many good intensive phonics programs from which to choose. What are some of the ones that you all use? Phonics Pathways is a good intensive phonics curriculum, yes. Learn to read 100 Easy Lessons, yes. Good intensive phonics. Writing Road to Reading, that's a Spalding method. That's considered the best intensive phonics curriculum, and there are several people that have taken that Writing Road to Reading and expanded it and made it more usable. Tatris is one that I particularly like. It's called Teach America to Read and Spell by Frank Rogers. That's a very nice one. Alpha Phonics is another good one. Lots of good intensive phonics curriculum to choose from. Copywork. Now, when your child becomes reasonably proficient at printing his letters, and he's on the road to learning how to read, then you can begin him on copywork. The practice of copywork dates back to ancient times, and is, along with narration, the first step in teaching a child how to write. Copywork is a good way to practice handwriting skills, reinforce phonics instruction, introduce grammar and proper sentence structure, and it will lay a foundation for creative writing when he's older. In copywork, a child will copy on his own paper, word for word, from a sentence or a paragraph which someone else has written. So you put before the child's eyes some piece of literature, like a Bible verse or a poem or something, and he has his own pencil and paper, and he will copy word for word what he sees on the paper. This is the first step in learning how to write. Okay, number 2 is oral narration. Now, in Britain, at the close of the 19th century, Charlotte Mason developed the concept of narration as a method for teaching. And in her book, For the Children's Sake, Susan Schaefer McCulley has reintroduced narration to homeschooling families. Karen Andriola, who's going to, by the way, I heard she's going to be a speaker here next year. She's a great speaker. Karen Andriola followed this with a Charlotte Mason companion. In narration, the parent will read to the child something, or the child will read something to himself, and then the child will tell back to the parent in his own words what was just read. Now, it's best to begin narration at an early age, say when the child is 4 or 5. Practice it on a daily basis and continue all the way through the later teens. Narration is an exercise which builds mental stamina. According to Karen Andriola, narration takes the place of questionnaires and multiple choice tests. It enables the child to bring all the faculties of mind into play. The child learns to call on the vocabulary and descriptive power of good writers as he tells his own version of the story. Narration is actually very difficult to do. Could you, without notes, narrate to me the sermon you heard last Sunday? Could you do it? Most of us couldn't do it because we have not developed our minds to the point where we can hear something, retain it, and then tell it back. Can you imagine how difficult that is? And that's what you want to do with your children when they're young. Develop that ability. You see how it can strengthen and train the mind of a child if you start out when they're young and continue it all the way through their teen years. Start small. Read to your child just one short paragraph on a simple story and then tell him to retell the story in his own words. Now, in the beginning, you might have to prompt him with questions about the passage. But as the child becomes more practiced in the skill of narration, he'll be able to narrate longer, more detailed passages. Number 3, and this goes along with narration, is memorization. Memorization should be begun when your child is young, even as young as 2 or 3, and continue throughout life. Time should be spent every day reciting memory work. Encourage your child to memorize things such as the Greek or Hebrew alphabets, passages from the Bible, poetry, catechisms, excerpts from literature. And then your child can memorize passages of the Bible in Greek or Latin and the same passages in English in order to give them a feel for the language. Memorizing passages of literature will prepare your child for the study of formal grammar at age 10. This will give him a feel for the way sentences are put together, and it will help him to build his vocabulary. So memorization also prepares your child to be a good writer. Perhaps your child can recite his memory work in front of the family or a larger group, and this will prepare your child for competitions in interpretation and speech and debate when he's older. So together, memorization and narration will train, will sharpen, and strengthen the mind, which will prepare your child for more rigorous studies later on. And that's precisely what we want to do in these years before age 10. By contrast, what are some things that you could do in your home that would work in the opposite direction, that would not train or strengthen the mind of your child? Television, videos, a lot of the so-called educational computer software. Those sorts of things do not train and strengthen the mind. They will work in the opposite direction. And we would suggest that, especially before age 10, you would eliminate those sorts of things from your child's life. Now, there's some discussion over what types of things to have your children memorize. There are a million things in the world they can memorize. Some say that the time should be spent memorizing facts, dates, Latin verb endings, miscellaneous scientific and geographic data. Maybe so, but since there's only so much time in the day, we as the parent will need to determine what is the best use of that time. If it's important to you that your child have all the states and capitals memorized by age 10, then you should do that. Both parents should sit down and write out a list of those things that are important to you to have your child memorize, and then adjust the list as different priorities emerge. We would suggest that passages of literature would be more important to memorize than just miscellaneous facts and data. Number 4 is hearing and listening. By reading aloud to your child, he learns the sounds of words, he increases his vocabulary, he enlarges his conceptions of the world, and he develops his imagination. We suggest that you read to your child at least 2 hours a day, of course not necessarily consecutive. Read from a wide variety of good literature, biographies, historical fiction. Include books on science, geography, art, music, and history. And some parents will combine narration with your read-aloud times. 3 points I want to make here. Don't be afraid to read to young children books with long chapters. A 5-year-old is perfectly capable of understanding such books as Treasure Island or Journey to the Center of the Earth. Number 2, don't waste your time reading fast food type books. What are some examples of fast food type books?
Comics?
Comics, probably, yes. Babysitter Club books. What else? Nancy Drew, Boxcar Children. Pardon me? Goosebump books, okay. Now, why do I say you want to avoid fast food type books? Well, you want to develop in your child a proper appetite. Let's say that you have a child who, from birth, you fed only hamburgers and French fries. And at age 10, you gave her asparagus. What would she do? She wouldn't like it. And why? Because she hasn't developed that type of appetite. She's developed the wrong type of appetite.
Broccoli is not edible.
You like broccoli. She's developed the appetite for fast food. She doesn't like the good food. It's the same with literature. If you have a daughter who's been reading only Nancy Drews all the way through, and then at age 10 you give her Robert Louis Stevenson, she's going to say, this is boring, I don't get it, I don't like it, because she's developed the wrong type of appetite. So we would suggest that you help your child develop the proper type of appetite even when they're young. Now there is a place for books such as the Boxcar Children when they're very young as a tool for teaching them to read. But you want to get them off those types of books as soon as possible and get them into the more difficult books. Yes?
What about the, we have a lot of the illustrated classics, geared down for young children.
The abridged versions?
Abridged versions.
I would suggest
of the classics.
Yes, I would suggest staying away from those. Number one, they ruin the story for the original. And the child might not ever want to read the original versions, and that would be bad. And really, there's no need to read those. There's so many other good books that are simpler in language, such as Lois Lenski books, Little House on the Prairie books. We have a booklet called Hand That Rocks the Cradle that lists all the books that we have read to our children over the last 25 years, and it lists them in categories as to age. Number 3 is don't require your child to sit down beside you perfectly still while you read. Allow them to play on the floor with their toys, with their Legos, do their drawings, do their sewing or whatever. In our family, the rule was you had to stay in the same room and you may not talk, but you can work on whatever you want to work on while I read aloud. And I will promise you one thing, by the time they're 26, they will be quiet while you read. But allow them to work on whatever they want to work on while you're reading aloud to them. Reading aloud is my favorite part of homeschooling. How many of you like to read aloud? Yes, we all love to read aloud. Now, how many of you have had this experience? You're sitting on the couch, you can't sit on a chair, it has to be a couch, in the middle of the couch, reading a good book such as Men of Iron. Anybody read Men of Iron by Howard Pyle? Men of Iron? Oh, that's such a book. What? Men of Iron is one of the best books. And the same Auto of the Silver Hand by Howard Pyle. Oh, those are so good. Anyway, you're reading Men of Iron. One child sits over here. One child sits over here. One child sits, behind your neck on the back of the couch. One child is on your lap. See, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5th child has to, sit at your feet or whatever. And they all have to be just situated just so, because they have to see the pictures. You have to stop and they have to examine the pictures just so. Do you like to read in a dialect? How many of you read in a dialect? Okay. What kind of dialect do you read in?
The Irish brogue.
Yeah? Okay. John Buchan wrote a lot of books in Irish and Scottish brogue and English. Those are really good. John Buchan. My children refuse to go through the McDonald's drive-thru when I'm in that kind of a mood. Mom, please. Do you like sad books? The saddest book that I've ever read, is called Bob, Son of Battle. That book will absolutely make you bawl. It is just, it's wonderful. Okay, you can develop your child's idea of the continuity of history by marking those things you study or read about on a timeline. So you get yourself a long piece of computer paper where it's all stuck together. Draw a line down the middle. On one end you have 4004 BC, on the other end you have today's date. Stick it on the living room wall and leave it there for the next 20 years. And that's your family's timeline. So anytime you read something of an historical nature, post it right on the timeline. It'll give your children an idea of the continuity of history. Number 5 is family worship, and we talked about that earlier this morning. Contrary to the old saying, the family which prays together stays together, studies have shown that the family which only prays together, that is, worships together only at church, does not usually stay together. The family which stays together is the family which prays and studies the Bible together regularly as a family at home. And we have a booklet and a seminar on that particular subject. Yes?
I had that scenario with them sitting all around you. I had 7 kids, and then I got the baby climbing on me and tearing. What are you doing? I have such a hard time with being loud.
I would give my right arm to have that scene today. My kids are all in their 20s.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. It doesn't last very long. And read books that you like. Don't read books that you hate, because that you're going to communicate to your kids you don't like. So read books that you enjoy. Yes.
For young kids, like C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis.
Too much for like a 5-3.
No, not a I think a 5-year-old can understand C.S. Lewis. Sure. Yes.
Do you reread the books to the younger kids later on?
Sure. We read.
And the older kids just listen to different.
Yeah, we read Little House on the Prairie. I don't know how many times. I've read almost every book, probably twice. Yes. Yes.
What was the name of the book by Howard Pyle?
There's Men of Iron, and there's Otto of the Silver Hand. These are all listed in our booklet, Hand That Rocks the Cradle. We also have a booklet called Lives in Print that lists biographies. Hand That Rocks the Cradle is mostly all fiction. Okay, let's go on to number 6, arts and crafts. Young children learn more through their senses. They need more hands-on manipulatives before age 10. So you want to provide your children with the place, the tools, and the time to develop their creativity using art. You want to have a low shelf in your living room or wherever it is you read aloud to your children, and stock it with good quality art supplies, good quality colored pencils, paper, wallpaper sample books, fabric samples, glue, clay, all kinds of things, and then have a little table and chairs so that they can pull out their art supplies when it's convenient to them and work on their art supplies. Don't keep the art supplies up on a high shelf so they have to ask mommy to get them down and work on the art. That does not encourage their creativity. Allow it to be so that they can get them out when they want to, and then teach them, of course, to keep it neat. You're not going to have a Better Homes and Gardens house, of course, with this sort of a scene, but you want your children to be able to develop their creativity. And don't make them put everything away. If they're working on a project, don't make them put it away at the end of the day. Let them keep it out. There's nothing that stifles a young artist than to have to stop their project and disassemble it and put it away at the end of the day. Of course, at some time you'll have to call an end to projects, but allow them to be creative. Okay, number 7, field trips and the library. Take field trips frequently. Take time to attend concerts and plays, museums and exhibits. Visit workplaces. When your child is 4 or 5, begin attending your local science and engineering fair. Anybody here gone to the science and engineering fair? Okay, they're usually held sometime in February or March. And you can observe all the different kinds of projects and experiments and encourage the child to think of a project or experiment that he could enter when he's about 13. Early on, form the habit of visiting the library on a weekly basis. Of course, when your child is young, you're going to start with your local public library. Teach them how to talk to the librarian, where the fiction is, where the nonfiction, biographies are, how to use the computer. And then when they're about 12 or so, take them to a good college library where they use the Library of Congress system and teach them how to do research using that kind of a system. And then by the time they're 15, take them to a very large university library. What would be the largest university library you have here? Okay, how many of you have been to that library? Taking your children there? Okay, by the time they're 18, they should be thoroughly familiar with doing research in a big university library. Now, of course, you're going to learn how to do this along with them. If you don't know how to do it, when they're small, you start out small and you work up. Number 8 is work and service. Develop in your child a love for work and service. From the time a child is able to walk and talk, he should be given regular chores to perform. And I'm not talking about just feeding the dog and making your bed. I'm talking about a 5-year-old who's perfectly capable of putting away all the laundry, folding and putting away the laundry. A 10-year-old can prepare simple meals from start to finish. Children of all ages can clean and straighten the house. You as the mother should not go around picking up, and putting away. You know how we can do that all day long? The children should be doing all of that for you. I don't cook. I haven't cooked in years. I give my girls jurisdiction over my kitchen. They take care of, they manage the whole household now for me. And that should be your goal. By the time your children are in their teens, they should be able to run your household. Now, along with work, children should be taught to serve. And you probably have many opportunities for community service in an area this size. We regularly visited nursing homes when our children were younger. Other volunteer opportunities abound. Our girls have crocheted from thread, tiny baby booties for different pro-life organizations. So when a mother gets a positive pregnancy test, she gets one of these pair of baby booties as her first baby gift. Another area is in the neonatal intensive care units of your local hospital. Do you have university hospitals here?
We have a good children's hospital.
Okay. You might look into that. They need hospital gowns for the tiny babies that are born there, and they also need bereavement gowns for the babies that die. Number 9 is discipline. Some people wonder why we talk about discipline in a seminar on classical education, but we found that if the area of discipline is neglected, then we may as well forget about the academics. Children will never learn self-discipline if parents do not train them in it. The child who does not develop self-discipline will fail in many things, including the academics for which you hope to prepare him. Here are some questions you could ask yourself. Am I satisfied with the obedience of my children? Am I satisfied with my child's obedience? Do I enjoy being around my child? Do I enjoy being around my child? Do my children honor and respect me? Do they see me as the queen and daddy as the king, and they are the little servants in training? They're there to serve you, not the other way around. If your answer is no to any of these questions, then you might want to reevaluate your priorities. If you don't have first-time obedience and respect from your children of all ages, then your homeschool journey will have many difficulties. Regarding first-time obedience, we highly recommend a book. It was originally published in 1833. It's called The Mother at Home by John Abbott. The Mother at Home by John Abbott. And this book is a valuable resource for training young women from a biblical perspective on the art of mothering. Don't allow your child to ignore you. You are the immediate reason for why he's alive. When you tell him something, make sure he hears you. Okay, and the last thing is, give your child plenty of time to play and explore. Okay, what have I left out?
Math.
I've left out math, right. Okay. We'll talk about that next. Okay. We'll go to that next chart, the later knowledge level, 10 things to do with children ages 10 through 12. During the entire knowledge level, that's from birth to age 12, the child is gathering knowledge. In this later part, ages 10 through 12, academic discipline becomes more structured and formal, and the study of formal language grammar